In high school, I was very much inspired by a teacher who taught chemistry. Actually, he originated from England and taught chemistry with a very colorful way, and inspired me to be interested in learning more about chemistry. As I went to the United States for college, I also so happened to be particular courses in organic chemistry, where professors also provide fascinating lectures in organic chemistry. That led me to be interested in organic chemistry. But as I going to graduate school, I want to major in biochemistry because I find that biochemistry involves many of the organic chemistry that we studied in undergraduate students. So a professor of mine taught me about the transport of processes in the biological system requiring membrane. And that fascinated me. And in 40 years ago, the membrane transport was in infancy. And while I was learning more about physics and physical biochemistry of the transport process in leading to synthesis of glucose, for instance, or burning to oxygen in mitochondria. Well, I don't know how some of your students here may remember, require the transport electrons to produce the energetic molecule called adenosine triphosphate. That was my postdoctoral fellowship. And got me to appreciate the biological role of cell membrane and membrane of the subcellular organelles within the cells. And I find that it's fascinating. And then I told my mentor in graduate school, in University Medical School in University of Oregon, in Portland, Oregon, and that I wish I could apply the knowledge to discover medicines able to help humankind. And that was the wish of my father when he sent me to study in America. And I need to do things to do good to humankind. And that remained my calling. And so when I have occasion to be employed by either academic institution or pharmaceutical laboratories, I chose to join Eli Lilly and Company. When I entered that engaging research in Eli Lilly laboratories, and I find myself into a new reading of new finding about brain, and fascinate me with the transport processes for neurotransmitters. In fact, the transport transmitter is like a vacuum pump that sucks all the excessive concentration of neurotransmitter in the synapse. And I thought by discovering a proper molecule to inhibit the transporters or the uptake process may benefit of retaining concentration of neurotransmitter in the synapse as a way to ameliorate illness, the mental illness. So perhaps that would be how I get into neuroscience.
A virus called acute gastroenteritis in children. What I did start out doing was developing under supervision an interest in gut flora, how it was associated with malabsorption states, and what damage and what benefit it was. This eventually moved through to work in the Department of Gastroenterology at the Children's Hospital, where they did treat a lot of children with malabsorption. And in particular, they had developed a real interest in the newly diagnosed sugar malabsorption. Sugar malabsorption was a problem, particularly after acute gastroenteritis. And together with two clinicians, we set out to have a look and see if there was an abnormal flora in the small intestine that might damage the gut and allow the clinicians to predict that their child might suffer sugar malabsorption after recovery from acute gastroenteritis. We found, first of all, a negative finding. I could not find anything particularly growing in the intestine that could be blamed. But the clinicians found a very damaged duodenal mucosa. So what we had found was clearly a reason why the children got sugar malabsorption, but not the reason why the damage occurred. I had failed, as I said, to grow anything, and the virology department had failed to grow anything, so it remained a puzzle. We found the lesion, but not the cause. And at that time, electron microscopy was beginning to be used, looking at specimens from the intestine and looking at histology. And so I moved over to the University of Melbourne. The Children's Hospital did not have an electron microscope at that stage, but Ian Holmes at the University of Melbourne was experienced in it. And we put together a team of four, myself, a young clinician in the hospital, and two electron microscopists from the university. Took a biopsy, sent it to the university, and the first slice of the first child we looked at was the most beautiful sight I think I've ever seen. It was a new virus which was clearly causing major damage. So in answer to your question, I have to say it's you just follow bit by bit, question by question, posing a question, looking for an answer. When you get a partial answer, you ask another question, and you move on, and eventually, if you're fortunate, you will get a result which in this case led to a major interest of my research life, and eventually vaccine development, which was contributed to by many people worldwide.
I came to develop cognitive therapy from personal conversations with him, and also because I brought a video along that we're going to show later in which he explains it. He is actually a lot like Dr. Bishop. He never meant to invent anything. He never intended to create anything new at all. In fact, he didn't even want to be a psychiatrist. He sort of accidentally ended up being a psychiatrist because there was a shortage of them during the war in the United States. Anyway, the key thing is that he ultimately became involved in psychiatry. And at that time, the ideas that were dominated the field were by Sigmund Freud. And in particular, Beck was drawn to depression. And the Freudian ideas are pretty straightforward there. The idea is that the depressed person is actually hostile towards themselves. Okay. And as Beck learned this, he discovered that a lot of people outside of psychiatry didn't think that psychiatrists were all that scientific, and that they didn't really believe these ideas. And so he conducted a very famous experiment in the late 50s to try to show that the psychodynamic theory of depression was true. And so he recorded the dreams of a bunch of patients to show that they were really angry at themselves. He was very disappointed to determine that his patients actually had less anger in their dreams than his controls. And in fact, mostly what the depressed patients expressed in their dreams was more or less a negativity about themselves, not a hostility. So this was something that Dr. Beck took as a big blow. And the next step came when he was interviewing some of his patients, and every so often he would notice that they would say something particularly negative that happened pretty quick. And ultimately he coined this idea an automatic thought. And automatic thoughts were people's interpretations of things that happened to them. So someone could say something to you like, see you later, a little bit short. And someone who's depressive might very well interpret that to mean this person hates me, it shows I really am a bad person, that kind of thing. And Dr. Beck quickly learned that a lot of people had these things. And this explained why two people would respond very differently to a situation, and one person would become depressed and another wouldn't. And so then he learned that he could develop through questioning, actually, a lot like what Dr. Bishop was describing with science. Through careful questioning, he could elicit that there really was no evidence for these biases, and he could help the person have a more adaptive idea about themselves and come to a position where they wouldn't be so depressed. So that's really how he started with cognitive therapy, the formulation being that there's a negative bias that the people have, and then ultimately developing a treatment that would go into it. But maybe to hit your question a little bit harder, why, after he discovered that, what got him going? I think once you help some people that are really suffering, and you help them get better, it can grab you. And so soon he moved along to work with anxiety disorders, substance abuse, all the way along to the work that he does with Muse, which is with schizophrenia, trying to help some of the people with the lowest quality of life have a much better quality of life. So maybe that's sort of a thumbnail sketch of sort of how it is that Dr. Beck inadvertently developed cognitive therapy and then turned it into, I think, one of the world's great psychosocial treatments.